Tony, you don't need to turn your camera on until your project presentation. Thanks. Okay, I think we're ready to start.
Thanks, Andrea. Good evening and welcome to this hybrid BCDC Design Review Board meeting. We appreciate your patience as we navigate this meeting format. You never know what will happen. My name is Jacinta McCann and I'm the chair of the BCDC Design Review Board. I'm located here at the Metro Center in San Francisco, and our meeting is going to include participants who are here and some who are participating online. Our first order of business is to call the roll. Board members, please unmute yourself to respond and then mute yourself again after responding. Andrea, can you call the roll, please?
Yeah, I'll start with you, Chair McCann.
Present.
Vice Chair Strang. Present. You just turned your microphone off, but I see you. I hear you.
There we go.
Board Member Battaglio.
Present.
And Board Member Wolfram.
Present.
We have 4 members present.
Thanks, Andrea. We have a quorum, so we will proceed. And the first thing I want to run through is some meeting instructions. And these are designed to make sure that everyone can navigate the technology, particularly for the meeting. So for everyone online and also in the meeting room, please make sure that you have your microphones or phones muted to avoid background noise. For board members, if you have a webcam, please make sure that it is on so everyone can see you. For members of the public, if you would like to speak during a public comment period that is part of an agenda item, you'll need to do so in one of 2 ways. First, if you're attending on the Zoom platform, please raise your virtual hand in Zoom. If you are new to Zoom and you've joined our meeting using the Zoom application, click the hand at the bottom of your screen. The hand should turn blue when it's raised. The second way, if you're joining our meeting via phone, you must press *9 on your keypad to raise or lower your hand to make a comment, and *6 to mute or unmute your phone. We will call on individuals who have raised their hands in the order that they are raised during the public comment period for each project. After you are called on, you will be unmuted so that you can share your comments. Please state your name and affiliation at the beginning of your remarks. Remember, if you have a limit of 3 minutes to speak on an item, and we will tell you when you have 1 minute remaining. Please keep your comments respectful and focused. We're here to listen to everyone who wishes to address us, but everyone has the responsibility to act in a civil manner. We will not tolerate hate speech, threats made directly or indirectly, and/or abusive language. We will mute anyone who fails to follow these guidelines or who exceeds the established time limits without permission. For public comments, please note that we will only hear your voices. Your video will not be enabled. For members of the public attending our meeting in person in our headquarters building, I will ask you to maintain social distance during the meeting. The board secretary will call you up to the podium for public comment, and wearing masks is optional but recommended in this building. You will be asked to come up to the podium one at a time and to state your name and affiliation prior to providing your comments during the meeting. If you would like to add your contact information to the interested parties list to be notified of future meetings concerning these projects, please call or email the board secretary, Andrea Gaffney, whose contact information is on the screen or can also be found on the BCDC website. Now, finally, every now and then you will hear me refer to the meeting host, Ashley, who is our our BCDC staff are acting as hosts for the meeting behind the scenes to ensure that the technology moves the meeting forward smoothly and consistently. Please be patient with us if it's needed. And now the board secretary will provide an update.
Okay, thanks, Chair McCann. This will be a brief update, as I'm going to cover the regulations update in a separate briefing that will be presented after the meeting minutes reviewed. So first off, Senate Bill 198 was recently passed, which has enabled board members to attend DRB meetings online without making your physical location open to the public. This means you can now attend DRB meetings online instead of coming to 375 Beale Street. We decided to hold tonight's meeting in a hybrid format, but want to discuss how to approach future meetings. So curious to hear if you have a desire to return to fully online meetings or if you would prefer to keep the hybrid meeting format. The allowance for the online meetings will last until July of 2023. It was a temporary measure put in place. We can be flexible for each meeting, you know, and be responsive to public health conditions. But I've been asked to get your input on whether or not to continue holding them in this hybrid format or if we should just return back to fully online. So I'll stop and hear your comments and thoughts on that at this point.
Okay, well, I think it's a good time to check in on it because we've been experiencing both formats in the last year or more than year or two. My personal view is I think keeping the hybrid format for now makes sense. It's a good backup. I personally think having as many people meeting in person as we can, barring no other major surge in, you know, health issues, which means we should review it. I think it's a good thing. I think it's good to get back to normal and to be doing, you know, engaging with each other. But I completely understand why someone might not be able to attend for lots of different reasons. And others, you know, if everyone starts to feel like, let's go back to virtual, you know, we can change. But Gary, what do you think?
Yeah, I just want to second what you've said. I think that we should maintain the hybrid. I think also that we should be encouraging the board members to show up in person. I think that it really creates a center of gravity for the meetings, which I don't think you get online. And I think that there's always a lot of information transferred besides in an orally. So, yeah.
Bob?
I agree. Sounds good to me. Yep.
Okay, Andrew, your thoughts?
Yeah, I agree. I would love to have been with you today, but I'm recovering from some surgery, so being at home was convenient. So, because I probably would not have been able to attend otherwise, but I agree with everything that you said, Chair McCann and Gary as well. So.
Thanks so much, Andrew. Okay, Andrew, is that sufficient feedback?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah,
Right.
So we'll continue with the hybrid format.
Good.
Thanks. Okay, so two more quick updates. Mission Bay will soon be opening up another section of the waterfront, which is the photograph here on the slide. This is the P3 parcel, affectionately known as P3, along Mission Creek. And then the Bayfront Park in front of the Chase Center, which is known as P22 in our world, broke ground, or re-broke ground last week. So that should be open by the end of 2023, hopefully. So exciting waterfront stuff. And then the last thing that I have is the next DRB meeting will be September 12th, and will include project reviews for Middle Harbor Shoreline Park and the San Leandro waterfront redevelopment which is known as Monarch Bay. So if you don't have any questions, then that's the end of my update, and we can move on to meeting minutes. If you need
I just had one.
Sorry, go ahead, Andrew.
I just had one question about the Monarch Bay. Is that something you could just send us some information in case, because it'd be nice to be able to do a site visit, and so if there was anything you can send, you know, further in advance, that would be helpful.
Yep, happy to. It's actually the third review of the site. There's been two different development proposals that have been brought to the board in the past. This one is different, but I'll send that information and then project location. And the staff report is being prepared right now, so I'll send all that out shortly.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, thanks, Andrea, and I really appreciate you continuing to update us on the new parks, new sections of trail as they come online. It's incredibly important and exciting to see it. So it's a great time to see so many new projects coming on. Okay, let's move on to the next item, which is review of the meeting minutes. And it's a slightly unusual meeting this time because we have 5 sets of meeting minutes to review. And I do want to recognize the hard work done by Andrea and team on these minutes. So we're going to move them one at a time. So, and we have some comments that have been received from a couple of the board members. So let's start with the March 7th minutes. And I had no comments on these, the March 7th meeting minutes. Did anyone else have comments on March 7th?
Which project is that?
This was the
No project. The no project meeting.
This was the short meeting where we just had updates on general updates, but we did not have projects that night.
Yeah, there was a Zoom link snafu.
Malfunction.
Yes.
Yes. Yes. So would someone like to, or hearing no comments, Andrew, no comments from you, I assume? Yep. Hearing no comments, can someone set a motion to?
I'll move to approve those minutes.
I second.
Second, Bob. Moved. Vice Chair. Okay. All in favour? Aye.
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 Okay. So moved. Okay. Thank you. Let's move to the next March 21 minutes. And this meeting covered 2 projects. The first was the Middle Harbour project, and the second was 505 Bayshore Road. There were, if we could just move through comments on that. I had a very minor comment, page 8, point B, 6B. It was just expressional. It says, the opening to sentence just says, well, this is an important issue, but an issue for BCDC. I wondered if that was what was meant to be said or just simplify it to, well, this is an important issue for BCDC. Andrea?
I think it probably was not an issue for BCDC.
Okay. Not an issue. If you can make whatever the...
But I can go back and
double check
the audio.
Yeah, it just wasn't completely clear. So, any other comments on the March 21st meeting minutes?
I have a comment on the Oakland Middle Harbor Shoreline Master Plan.
Mm-hmm.
We were discussing the merits of restoration ecology concept compared to conventional landscaping, and there's something in there that said that it was really labor intensive, and so I wanted to comment on that. And before I do, I wanted to ask, in these minutes, it doesn't say who said what. So, you know, in the past, I would just go through and check my own comments. I wouldn't check other people's comments, but I'm pretty sure I'm commenting on somebody else's comment, but I would maybe just say it anyway. But is that what we're going to get from now on? And it's okay with me. I just wanted to kind of see what you thought about that.
We decided to remove board member identification when there was more than one board member support for a comment, and to just make it more of a summary of comments and directives. If you prefer that we reinsert board member identification into the minutes, we can do that. It's just a little more labor intensive.
Yeah.
That's all.
Yeah, it's fine. It's fine. I just kind of wanted to know what the rules are going forward. So obviously, if you don't, you know, then I have to read all the minutes instead of just reading what I said. But so it's fine. I'm happy to do that. So back to the comment though about the really labor intensive. I think that in a way that maybe what the person was saying is that there is an establishment period that may be more labor intensive than conventional landscaping, but ultimately I think it's less labor intensive, especially in a coastal fog belt environment. I think the establishment is much easier, and I think once it does get established, it's just way, way less maintenance. And that was the direction, the whole justification for the conversation we had was to remove the burden of maintenance from the port, on this site that was just filled with, bay sand and was really, really difficult.
Okay, it's a good point, Gary. I'm just going to jump in here. I think it's page 3, section E2, clause B, and it does have uppercase, really labor intensive, and so the statement is approach it from a restoration ecology concept, which is which requires some labor, or requires. How would you phrase that?
I think it requires specialized procedures. I don't think it's more labor intensive.
Good.
I think it's just
Okay.
a culture change.
Which requires specialized labor procedures. Okay. Look, I appreciate you bringing that up because this does, the uppercase makes it, could put people off.
And maybe, discouraging for the presenter, the owner.
Yeah. Okay, appreciate that. Any other comments?
No comments.
I had some comments on those minutes, I believe, and I actually sent mine to Andrea, and I don't have a copy with me. I'd be happy to explain myself.
I have them. I folded them in.
Okay.
So on page 5, in the section on the beach, K1, we actually called out Bob Battaglio on this one, although we spelled your name wrong. Sorry.
That's okay.
He stated he cannot support the design without seeing studies first and expressed concern about the cost of the beach restoration versus the guaranteed success of the beach creation restoration. So starting at concern, the change was that the proposed design deviates from the original design significantly and had expected additional sand placement at the existing beach location rather than over at Point Arnold. Mr. Battaglio suggested an alternative approach would be to lower the existing beach rather than filling the offshore muddy area, which would result in a more stable area for wading. Then in the section L under the boardwalk dunes, in comment 3, consider placing coarser sediments like pebbles over the sand to hold it down. Instead of hold it down, it says, the comment is to reduce wind-blown transport of sand.
They both sound reasonable. Thanks, Bob.
Thank you.
Good.
Thank you, Andrew.
There's
One more.
one more.
Okay.
Seems appropriate.
Page 8, section 6, other, letter A. I think it was a additional comment that it said, Battaglio noted that the site will be more exposed to waves if the Bay Trail embankment is not raised above future sea levels, and therefore the 100-year event would be more extreme than the project design event. So it's an additional comment.
Mm-hmm.
And that's for the other project.
Correct.
Right,
Yeah, that's the 505 project.
Okay, well, taking in those 3 amendments from Bob, Gary's proposed amendment.
I think Andrew also has some comments.
Oh, sorry, Andrew, go ahead.
Okay. Just on page 4 for special events, number 1, it says host as many events as possible for funding of the park maintenance. I remember Kristen, I think her intent there was to host events, but not as many events as possible. That makes it sound like we think the park should just be an event center or something. The language of it doesn't quite get the nuance, I think, of what she was saying, which was that you should try to do events to support the maintenance, but I don't think she was literally saying as many events as possible. So I don't know how we can nuance that slightly, but it just sounds like we're asking them to do constant events.
Maybe it's host a balanced number of events.
Yeah.
Could be other ways, but let's say that. Thanks, Andrew. Okay, so we have, I won't go through them again, but with those amendments as proposed, can someone put forward a motion to approve the minutes of the March 21st, 22 meeting?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second?
A second.
I'll second.
Bob second, Battaglio second. Okay. Good. All those in favour? Aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Approved. Thank you. Okay, we'll now go to the draft minutes of the April 11th. Have I got that correct? Just make sure this, yes, April 11th, hybrid design meeting. This was a meeting where we reviewed 410 Airport Boulevard and 557 Airport Boulevard, two projects. I had one amendment on page 5, the bottom paragraph G, the applicant response. Looks like it was accidentally replicated for the applicant response paragraph for the second project. So I think I would propose we delete that for the second project and approve the minutes with a substituted applicant response that staff can prepare. Does that sound all right, Andrea?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, thank you. Other comments?
No comments here.
Did I have any other comments, Andrea, on this one?
No.
Okay, no comments.
Andrew, any comments?
No, no comments.
So we'll move, I'd like to ask someone to move a motion to approve the minutes as proposed to be amended.
Make a motion to approve.
Second?
All in favour? Aye.
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 Thank you. Okay. Next minutes are the May 9th, 22 minutes. And in this meeting, we reviewed 777 Airport Boulevard, and 200 Twin Dolphin. They were the two projects. So, proposed amendments, please.
No comments here.
Bob had a couple comments. So this one is on page 4. Let's see, where is this? Comment number 4, after B, he proposed adding C, which was several board members noted that it is disappointing to see the building footprint encroach into the 100-foot shoreline band, and noted that the increased area of public space adjacent to the roadway embankment was intended to mitigate for said encroachment, but overall is not desirable.
Sorry, can you clarify where that's being inserted?
It is on page 4, which is the, I think it's the first project.
Yeah.
Right,
I'm
right.
sorry, it's the Twin Dolphin?
No, I think it's the airport.
No, yeah,
Boulevard.
it's the Airport Boulevard one.
Yeah.
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 So it's comment 4, and then there's a B, and he is proposing to add a letter C.
Oh, about the, yes, because we definitely discussed the intrusion into the shoreline band. Yeah, thank you.
Correct. Yep.
Thanks, Bob. That's a good amendment.
Thank you. Was that my only comment?
Yep, that was the only one.
Okay.
Thank you.
I have no comments. Andrew, any comments?
No comments.
Okay. So with that, I'd like someone to move a motion to approve the May 9th minutes with the amended amendments as proposed.
Make a motion to approve.
I second.
Thank you. All in favour?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Aye, yep.
Okay, final minutes. Just to let everybody know, we're almost through these. Draft minutes of the June 13th meeting. And at that meeting, we reviewed Estuary Park and Peninsula Crossing, two projects that night. proposed amendments?
I have no comments.
I received a couple comments from Kristen Hall.
Yes, and they were good comments.
Yep.
We should.
Okay. First one is on page 3, in the project's limit of work under number 3. So recommended further study on the restroom building and boat storage area. Could the restrooms be connected to the JLAC building rather than independent? Does boat storage need to be there is the question. She proposes striking that and adding the following, which is improved design to consider movements for how rowers will get boats to the water.
Mm-hmm. That's a good amendment, because my recollection is we discussed it and we weren't going to move, but the movement as stated there makes sense. So, okay, then there was a second.
Yeah, the next comment was on page 4, under section D, comment 4, under gatherings and events, develop a plan for the proposed events and activations for the park. What are the events that can happen along this waterfront with Jacqueline Square and Brooklyn Basin? Is this site the best opportunity for events in the waterfront? Her proposal is to strike, is this site the best opportunity, and add, this site may be one of just a few good opportunities for events on this waterfront.
I also agree with that amendment. We should definitely be encouraging some events on the site.
Okay.
Yeah, and we did discuss it that way. I think that's accurate.
There was one typo where we spelled trial instead of trail on page 7 at the bottom in the applicant response. So I've corrected that.
Okay, that's noted. Any other comments, Andrew?
No.
I had one comment, just page 6, section F, number 1. This was configuration of buildings, and I'll just read the first statement. Buildings 2 and 3 are stepping into the shoreline band, and it diminishes the public's experience at Eastern Creek. And I just wanted to add in their experience and its ecological function, because I think we really were concerned about that. And the creek's ecological function. Okay. Gary?
Motion to approve.
Good. As amended. A second for the minutes of June 13th minutes. Andrew?
A second and approve.
All in favour?
Aye.
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 Okay, so we have approved the last 5 minutes. I just want to restate, I think anyone listening to this can appreciate how much work goes into the minutes and how critical they are for the board and for everyone, the proponents, to be able to have a clear statement of what was said that was critical at the meeting. So thanks again to Andrea and team. We really appreciate it. Great job. Okay, Andrea, over to you for a briefing on updated regulations to the DRB.
Okay, thanks. Just give me a second while I figure out how to get this screen displayed correctly.
Okay.
success. Okay. So this is a short briefing on the regulations update that we've recently completed. Now, slides. Okay, so this is a timeline of the update process. We started discussing regulation updates in 2018, while we also started succession planning discussion for the board. Many of board members had recently retired after decades of service, and a couple others had expressed interest in retiring. So we thought it was a good time to begin discussing the future of the board and how to improve it. In 2019, we continued these discussions and moved the conversation forward by appointing Bob Battaglio as the engineer board member replacement for Roger Leventhal, who had served on the board since 1997. We also identified possible regulation updates and a list of criteria for future board members. In 2020, a week before the shelter-in-place order was issued, the board agreed to form a committee to review board candidates and nominate replacements for 2 board members. That summer over Zoom, we held interviews for board candidates, and in September, the commission appointed Kristen Hall and Andrew Wolfram as the 2 newest board members. The board also directed staff to revise the DRB regulations to create term limits and change the restrictions on who can be appointed as alternates, and I'll explain that in a couple of further slides. 2021 was the year that staff worked on revising the regulation language. The regulations update was extensive, of which the DRB update was only a very minor part, so the process was long. Eventually, the commission approved all of the changes, and legal staff worked with the Office of Administrative Law to edit the revised regulations into acceptable language. In 2022, the commission approved the final revised regulations text, and just last week, the Office of Administrative Law approved the regulations update. And this update will go into effect on October 1st, 2022. So after 4 years of work, we finally have the ability to appoint new board members as alternates who will serve with term limits. And I'll briefly review these updates with the next few slides. So the basic makeup of the board is defined in the regulations. They define the board as having 7 board members with at least 1 architect, 1 landscape architect, and 1 engineer. These design professions represent the minimum necessary to hold a productive review of a development project. To hold a meeting, we need 4 members to make a quorum. And in the past, it's often been a challenge to achieve quorum because of board members' schedules and project conflicts. And this is why it's useful to be able to call on board alternates in the event that a quorum can't be achieved. The previous regulations allowed up to 10 alternates. However, they must have been former board members. And since there were no term limits, board members often served for decades on the board prior to stepping down. And this created an issue with being able to have a sufficient number of alternates to call upon for meetings. So here's what we changed to address the quorum and availability issue. The regulations update made 2 key changes by defining term limits and removing the requirement that alternates must be former board members. The new regulations, like I said, go into effect October 1st, so we wanted to brief you now so that you can consider the next steps. Excuse me. The updated regulations allow for 5-year terms of service that are renewable for up to 15 years of combined service as a board member or alternate over 3 terms. The number of alternates was reduced from 10 to 7 to provide an alternate for each board seat. The requirement for alternates to be former board members was also removed. Alternates may be former board members, or they may be newly appointed as alternates. Former board members bring project review knowledge, while new alternates may bring additional expertise to project review. And we thought it was best to allow for both types. The goal for board review is to have a complete board as much as possible for each review. So having 7 alternates should help with quorum issues and with providing a more robust project review. The board agreed to term limits and thought they would be useful for several reasons. To establish points at which board members could elect to leave or become alternates, to allow for new opportunities for service from within the design community, and to provide opportunities for additional expertise to be added to the board as needed. The term limits take into account the typical development cycle, knowing that a project could complete design review and permitting within a 5 to 15-year period, depending on the scale and complexity of the project. The 5-year term also gives board members an opportunity to see a variety of projects and contribute a meaningful impact on the development of the shoreline. So I'll stop here and see if there's any questions.
No questions from me. I think there's clearly been a lot of work done over a long period. I know it's been a process that's taken a lot of commitment to get there over the line. I'm very grateful that you've done it, and I think these make a lot of sense. So I'm enthusiastic about these changes. Yeah.
Great. Okay. Got a few more slides, so I'll keep going. Okay, so this is our current board, and just want to walk through what this means for the current board members and alternates. The top 4 board members were appointed 10 years ago. So you are at the end of your second term. And then the 3 on the bottom were appointed more recently. The current alternates are all former board members who served on the board for greater than 15 years. So you can see, Cheryl was appointed in 2004, Roger 97, and Karen in 94. So they have been with us for a long time and had a great impact. So looking at all of this and understanding the timelines, there are some opportunities for change. This chart shows when each board member was appointed and when each term is up. And at the end of the first and second terms, board members will have a decision to make about future board service. Continue as a board member, become an alternate, or retire. So for the 4 of you who will be completing your second term, your 10 years of service, you'll have to make this decision. It's either continue on the board for the final 5-year term, become an alternate for the final 5-year term, or retire from the board at the end of the 10-year term. And I'll follow up with you about that as we move forward. The second term, the end of the 10 years is in November of this year. So the 3 alternates who have served more than 15 years on the board will need to retire from service. The goal is to identify new alternates to replace them in their respective professional roles so that we can continue to have alternates available as needed. So please be thinking about your next steps as we go forward. We also have another impending change on the board where board member Andrew Wolfram will step down after the September meeting and take on the role as an alternate. And I'll pause now and let Andrew say a few words about his transition if he wants.
Thank you, Andrea. I'm going to be relocating to Italy for at least a year. And so in that time, I won't obviously be able to attend regular hearings. So this made sense to be an alternate. And then when I return, I will be more available for service, and maybe sometimes I'll be available for service even when I'm there, but that's my plan for right now.
Okay, thanks.
Andrew, I just want to say something at this point. Is that okay? Andrew,
yes, of course.
I know you've been with us for a couple of years. It seems longer. your contribution's been really significant, and I just thinking back on some of the projects where I think your contributions have been very critical in terms of the DRB moving the project forward. So thank you very much. Terrific guy, and good luck with everything in Italy. We might say something again at the end of the September meeting, but a pleasure having you here. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Chair McCann. I've really enjoyed my service. It's been really fascinating, and especially the company of my fellow board members, such great intellects you have on the board.
We hope to see you as a very active alternate.
Okay, so starting in October, we will have 1 board position and 6 alternate positions to fill. The goal is to replace the board member first, while nominating alternates over time, starting with the landscape architect, civil engineer, and planner positions. I will return to that in a later meeting so that we can discuss sort of that process. But for now, I just wanted to sort of say that that's forthcoming. Something else that's coming, another piece of the regulations that were updated, added language about ex parte communications. This language has really only provided further clarifying instructions on how to handle ex parte communications. Did not add any new restrictions or limitations. Our staff attorney, Michael Ng, will provide a briefing on this and conflict of interest policies at the October meeting. So I'm not going to spend much more time on that tonight. And this final slide is totally in the weeds, but it's to let you know that we updated the regulations for the submittal of project materials for the design review. The underlined text is new text, and the strikeouts show the text that has been removed. There's 2 additional pages of strikeouts because the regulation section used to contain the entire contents of the DRB pamphlet. We've simplified the regulation language to be more responsive and flexible to the type of project review, as well as allow for policy updates to occur. So just to give you some context, the pamphlet has not been updated since before the climate change policies were enacted in 2010. So there's nothing in there about sea level rise. There's nothing in there about the environmental justice and social equity policies. So we know that that pamphlet needs to be updated, but the way that the regulation has been revised is it enables us to update the update the guidance pamphlet as needed with policy updates and other sort of changes. You know, it had requirements to submit paper drawings and things like that, and we don't do that anymore. We accept electronic drawings. So, and yeah, I guess that's the end of my update. So let me know if you have any other questions, please.
Quick question on this slide. The submittal of materials, the change from 14 to 45 days, what's the background on that?
So I don't know when 14 days was established, but it certainly hasn't been our operating procedure. Perhaps it's the 14 days of the submittal of the final materials for mailing, because we have to mail 10 days prior to the meeting for public notice requirements. But now we require draft submittals, 45 days in advance. There's a lot more content that goes into the staff report and the staff preparation. We provide comments on the draft exhibits so that they're better prepared for the project review. There is an ADA compliance requirement for any document that goes on the website that adds an additional level of work and scrutiny and review that we needed to incorporate into our workflow. So the 45 days really represents the entire process from sort of initial draft documents to the final meeting date, as opposed to the 14 days, which is when the sort of the final documents are due. So I think that's the main change.
Thank you. Andrea, will you be sharing the board updates, the slides, these updates with the rest of the board who are not here tonight?
Yeah, the intention is that we're recording the meeting. So I will send the slides, but I will also send a link to the meeting and ask them to watch the updates if they understand it. And I'll send them a separate email with some of the information that I presented in the slide deck on the regulation updates. So thank you.
I have a general comment and question before the proponent presents their project, if that's okay. Is now the right time for that? Yeah, I just wanted to ask this question in the context of the, maybe you can help me with this, we were invited to online discussion about the future direction of BCDC. I can't remember what the name of that was, but Jacinta and I both attended.
Yeah, it was part of the strategic planning process.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that was super helpful. And I think one of the comments that came out was, you know, how helpful it is for us to have larger context about the projects that we're seeing, because we see them parcel at a time, and it's nice to get the regional perspective and all that. So I wanted to ask a question, because before we hear this Burlingame project, we've been seeing a lot of Burlingame projects, and a lot of them are on adjacent parcels, and this area is getting a lot of attention. So I'm just wondering, is there some regional thing, or is there some kind of policy thing that's going on, or laws or regulations which can explain what is stimulating that, or is this just all kind of a big coincidence?
Did you see the briefing from the city of Burlingame and the One Shoreline at the May meeting?
Mm-hmm.
So I think they may have explained some of it, but they went through a general plan update and a zoning update, and so they significantly upzoned the intensity of development in Burlingame. And One Shoreline, which is a San Mateo County Joint Powers Authority, it's sort of a flood district of sorts, is overseeing the countywide adaptation planning efforts. And not sure if it's in concert with that, but the city of Burlingame updated their zoning ordinance to provide guidance on shoreline adaptation. And so there was, back in the 80s, an established set of development guidelines for the Anza Peninsula that looked at all of the open space and development on the Anza Peninsula and considered it in a more holistic view. And I'm assuming the zoning update and the general plan update looked at that, but BCDC was not part of that conversation. And so we've been, as a staff, we've been putting it together sort of project by project, and have been having conversations with the city to ask the same questions, sort of looking at it from a more citywide or regional perspective. So we're meeting with One Shoreline about their planning efforts. The briefing they gave in May suggested that they're going to have a regional solution, and they'll come forward and talk to staff about that as they have that coming together. But did I answer your question, or is there somebody else maybe who's more?
No, that was helpful, but I'd be happy to hear from anybody else who has a thought on it. I
mean, I heard you asking, you know, why is it somewhat curious to you that you're seeing all of these projects at this time? Like, is that what you were asking?
Yeah, there must be some driver. And
so, you know, maybe it's the upzoning. Maybe someone else might like to comment on that. But it might be it might be making redevelopment of these sites more feasible.
Mhm.
There's
Okay.
also, I think there's density bonuses with community benefits. So there's 3 tiers built into the zoning ordinance that are enabling an even higher density, development density, that I think are also making it more attractive. The Burlingame Point project that is built and in place and is now a Meta campus, was developed under the previous zoning ordinance, and they had to get an amendment. And so maybe that was part of the impetus for the change in zoning and sort of the attractiveness of the site and location. But I have a feeling that the project proponents for the project tonight may have some insight into that, since they are one of them. But
Great. Thank you very much. That's super helpful. I mean, I know I heard the presentation. Maybe I need to hear it more than once, or maybe it's just in plain language. It makes more sense to me. So, yeah,
Thanks.
Thank you.
Could I make a comment on that? Am I on? So is the Meta campus real or virtual? Oh. Sorry.
Okay.
Okay, I think we should get started on the project review tonight. So this is a first review of 620 Airport Boulevard commercial development in Burlingame, San Mateo County. And this is agenda item 5. It's a first review of an office development at 620 Airport Boulevard in Burlingame. And I just want to remind you of the project review order. So we'll have a staff introduction, then we'll have the project proponent presentation, we'll have board clarifying questions, public comment, board discussion and summary, and then an opportunity for the project proponents to respond. We try and keep it brief and pick up the key points. So with that, the BCDC permit analyst, Tony Dasog, is going to introduce the project. So over to you, Tony.
Well, thank you, Chair McCann. Before I present the staff introduction, I would like to remind the project team and staff to please turn on your videos when you're speaking or answering questions. And when you're not actively engaged with the board, please turn off your video so that we minimize the distractions on screen. And now, with that, I'm happy to introduce the project for tonight's review. So let me begin by sharing my screen. I hope you can see that. Oops, I'm trying. Oh, hold on, please. Let me stop sharing. Let me drag this down. Okay, let's give it one more shot. Okay, I hope you can see my screen now.
yeah, we can see it, Tony. Thanks.
Great. Good evening, Chair McCann and Design Review Board. Tonight, we will be reviewing an office R&D project with a public plaza and shoreline public access improvements. This project is located at 620 Airport Boulevard in the city of Burlingame, San Mateo County. 620 Airport Boulevard, as you just discussed, is one in a series of projects in Burlingame. So I'll start by giving a brief overview of the area with respect to our work at BCDC. Before we discuss the project, we would like to begin by acknowledging that the majority of the land in this area was once water and historical tidal flats located near Salson, the unceded ancestral homeland of the Ramaytush Ohlone. We offer our gratitude to the indigenous people who are the original stewards of the bountiful natural resources of the Bay Area. So this slide, project location and vicinity, shows the major land and water features in the vicinity of the project. The project site sits in a prominent position relative to the nearby Anza Lagoon. It's rough. And beyond the lagoon, of course, you can see the San Francisco Bay Area. Now, on this slide, we've identified the site itself in this yellow area. And as you can see, there are a number of projects in the vicinity in the Anza Lagoon area and around and beyond it. Much of these projects the DRB has reviewed. So there's a lot of projects going on, whether it's 410 to the east or 567 to the southeast or 777 Airport Boulevard to the west of 620 Airport Boulevard. Here is some regional context for parks and public access areas. The public access areas, such as the parks, are shown in blue. You can see the number of parks that are a relative close proximity. And the existing Bay Trail itself is here in red. It's worth noting that the Bay Trail also passes along the north and the northwest sides of the 620 Airport Boulevard project. 620 Airport Boulevard project site is currently occupied by a parking lot. There is an existing required public access area in a parcel that is separate from and next to the 620 Airport Boulevard parcel. This separate parcel is on the north and northwest sides of 620 Airport Boulevard. And it is along the Anza Lagoon itself, the shoreline of the Anza Lagoon. And the State Lands Commission owns this parcel. This is what you're seeing right here. This is a public an exhibit of a required public access area that was part of a permit issued in the late 1980s. This public access area includes, as you can see in this map, it includes a 10-foot wide Bay Trail segment, which is still there, as well as 2 shoreline seating areas, which you will see later in this presentation. It's worth noting that in 1999, BCDC assigned responsibility of this 1.4 acre required public access area to the current owner of the 620 Airport Boulevard, Boca Lakes, whose project is before you tonight. But Boca Lakes had not executed this permit assignment because the project under consideration in the late 1990s and the early 2000s never came to fruition. So now we're going to look at several slides of the parcel itself and subsequently of the adjoining public access parcel. So this slide contains a few photos taken on a recent visit. Photo number 1 right here shows a ground level view of 620 Airport Boulevard standing near the southwest corner of the site. And so I'm looking north and northwest across the project site, across the sea of parked cars. In photo 2, right here, I'm standing on the northwest edge of the 620 parcel, which is close to Anza Lagoon. So I'm standing on the northwest edge of 620 parcel, looking across the site in a southeast manner. Photo 3, right here, is I'm standing on the southern boundary of the parcel, near Airport Boulevard, and I'm looking north, and as you can see, there's a sea of parked cars. This slide contains a few photos taken of the existing public access area and the Bay Trail. In photo 1, I'm standing near the northeast corner of the overall project area, and I'm looking westward down the Bay Trail. In this photo, you can see 620 Airport Boulevard parking area to the left over here, and the shoreline and Anza Lagoon is on the right. In photo 1, you can also see the public access seating area in the distance, which is shown in the photo number 2 below. So in photo 2, I'm standing on a slight mound of grass near the northwest corner of the overall project site. And the view from here is looking northward through the 2 required public access seating areas. Now in this slide, in photo 3, I'm still in the northern portion of the overall project site, but this time I'm looking east. In photo 3, I am slightly to the east of the public access seating area, looking down the Bay Trail towards the east. You can see Kincaid's restaurant in the distance to the northeast, as well as the Hilton Hotel. In photo 4, I am now on the Bay Trail at the furthest southwestern edge of the overall project, and I'm standing near Airport Boulevard. In this photo, we're looking north and slightly northwest. And you can see the segments, not only the Bay Trail, but also some of the shoreline. And here are photos of the closer photos of the shoreline area. So this is the shoreline. Photo 2 is a shoreline that's just at low tide underneath one of the 2 required public access seating areas. And photo 1 is the shoreline area at low tide on the furthest western portion of the overall site. All right, so here now we're gonna start looking at community vulnerability issues. In looking at some of the regional setting of the project location, our community vulnerability mapping tool shows that the project area is actually having low social vulnerability, and that low social vulnerability is based upon a review of almost 25 US Census 2020 census data points. However, as you can see, approximately 1 mile from the project to the southeast, there are some areas that exhibit high social vulnerability. These nearby areas exhibit high social vulnerability with respect to concentration of children under 5, concentration of people over 65 who are living alone, a concentration of people with no high school degree, diploma, and concentration of individuals with limited English proficiency. So even though the project area itself exhibits low social vulnerability, it is in close proximity to areas exhibiting high social vulnerability. Regarding potential sea level rise issues and using current site elevations, this map shows what 24 inches of sea level rise would look like if the site remained unchanged. We used one risk aversion planning scenario from the 2018 OPC sea level rise guidance. We used the medium to high risk aversion scenario for public access improvements, the Bay Trail, and for the proposed building. Over here, the bottom row shows the equivalent future total water level this map corresponds to for the given risk scenario. So under the medium to high risk scenario, if there were to be 24 inches of inundation, what's equivalent to that is the sea level rise in the year 2050 with regard to the mean higher high watermark at that time. This map shows what 66 inches of sea level rise would look like at the site, again, if the project remained unchanged. For the medium to high risk scenario, 66 inches of sea level rise is equivalent to mean higher high watermark in the year 2090 or the 100-year storm at mid-century. In this slide, the San Francisco Estuary Institute Adaptation Atlas notes that the area's suitability with respect to beaches and eelgrass on the bay side in terms of tidal marshes and ecotone levees. And you can kind of see, if you squint very hard around the project, there is the color orange indicating migration space for adaptation. Now, as was discussed a little earlier, the city of Burlingame recently adopted a zoning ordinance establishing requirements for new construction within commercial and industrial zoning districts within the sea level rise overlay area, which is shown here in the yellow. The project site is subject to the new requirements of this, that's part of the new zoning. And the new requirements include that the lowest building finished floor elevation of new developments shall be at least 3 feet above the FEMA base flood elevation at the time the project application is complete. And because the property fronts the Anza Lagoon, new construction at the site must include shoreline infrastructure where the top is 6 feet above the FEMA base flood elevation. Before we introduce the project proponents, I'd like to quickly summarize the questions in the staff report that we'd like the board to consider in your review tonight. First, please consider how this project meets the 7 public access objectives, which are enumerated right here. How this project meets the 7 public access objectives provided in the BCDC's public access design guideline. Then we have identified some specific questions we'd like the board to discuss at this stage. Questions such as, how does the project proposal result in public spaces that feel public? And does the project proposal allow for the shoreline to be enjoyed by the greatest number of people? Are there additional improvements that the public access experience that could be done with regard to the public access experience along the shoreline? And question 3, what advice or criteria for interpretive art features might the DRB offer tonight? Finally, are the public access areas appropriately designed to be resilient and adaptive to sea level rise in balance with ensuring high quality public access opportunities? All right, before turning it over to the project proponent, the applicants, I want to check to see if the board has any clarifying questions for me with regard to this introduction.
Tony, thanks very much. That was very clear. I don't have any clarifying questions for you, Tony. Questions for Tony from anyone else?
I have, this is Andrew.
I agree.
Yes.
Andrew, you've got a question?
Yeah, one thing that I didn't completely understand is in the board report on page 2, it says, talks about the settlement agreement with the Anza Pacific Company and the state lands, and that the state was given 46 acres of the Anza Peninsula, including 9.4 acres at the project site to create this shoreline public access system. But that, I guess the words project site to me implied this project, so that was confused about that, because isn't the site a lot smaller than that? It's 1.3 acres, right, of shoreline access?
Yes, exactly. The public access parcel owned by the State Lands Commission is roughly 1.4 acres. That area that you saw that's along the shoreline. The project site itself is roughly 3.7. So combined, the overall project area encompasses 5.1 acres.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thanks, Andrew. Tony, I think we'll move on. Thank you very much. That was very helpful. Okay, so we will now move to the project proponent presentation. Thank you.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Wonderful. Thank you. So Chair McCann, board, staff, and members of the public, my name is Jeremy Louie. I'm with Vassar Properties, and we are the owners and operators of the lands of 620 Airport Boulevard in Burlingame, for which we have quietly enjoyed running as an airport parking lot for nearly 20 years. And today we have assembled an experienced and excellent team of designers and engineers who have put front and center the creation of open space and public access to the shoreline in the design of the project. We're joined by Willett Moss and Justin Naff of CMG. We're joined by Karen Kuklin of DGA. I believe on the phone we have Mads Jorgensen of the engineering firm Moffitt and Nichols, and then a deep bench of design specialists. And collectively, this team has designed and created some of the most interesting and beautiful projects up and down the peninsula and around the bay. Our project seeks to contribute to BCDC's mission and vision. We view the responsibility of bayfront development at a higher standard than any sort of typical project, and we certainly have prioritized shoreline access and the creation of public spaces. In fact, 40% of our project land area is dedicated exclusively for public use and includes new recreational fitness area, enhanced native planting, a re-energized bike and pedestrian connection, and adaptive sea level rise protection. I also wish to say that we certainly value and appreciate the community engagement process, and have reached out to and presented this project to a variety of community constituents relying on BCDC's guidelines for environmental justice to tailor our outreach. There are several components of this project, or of this proposal, that reflects the feedback that we have received, including splitting the buildings to preserve a prime view corridor, private and public amenities for cyclists, and an outdoor fitness area to provide a gym for those who otherwise don't have access to one. Lastly, there we go. Thank you. I wish to note that our project does indeed have a special situation, or not unique, but I'd say special, in that we are proposing improvements beyond our privately owned site. So, as Tony just mentioned, the project site is approximately 5 acres in the outer white dotted line, and the privately owned site is the inner rectangle that is approximately 3.7 acres. The remainder is state lands, but there's an existing lease to a private hotel operator that's located on the other side of the lagoon, and they currently have the rights and pleasure and obligation to maintain the lands. And I would like to say that we are working in collaboration with that entity as well as state lands, and are working through documentation to obtain the rights to create the improvements that we would that we're excited to present to you today. So without further ado, I'm going to turn this over to Justin Ath of CMG, and our entire team welcomes this opportunity to share the details and look forward to your thoughtful comments and questions. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Jeremy. I'm Justin with CMG Landscape Architecture. It's a pleasure to be here presenting this project. Let's see, is the page down, arrow down? There we go. I think Tony did a great job of describing the site and the site's location. We're in Burlingame, just south of the airport. We're really excited about the site's context within the Greater Bay Area and the local context, knowing that each of these sites has great opportunity and responsibility to create better public access and improve the ecology of the bay. Tony also mentioned that we are on historic tidal mudflats adjacent to lands of the Ramaytush Ohlone people. As you've seen, well described, the site is filled. It was filled in the 60s and now hosts commercial, recreational uses, as well as plenty of parking. And again, here's our site, 620 Airport. The site within the parcel is a parking lot that does not allow public access through it. The public parcel, as you see here, and as well described by the staff presentation, has a 10-foot wide bay trail that's below the current standards for the bay trail, with a few public seating areas that are, I think, in need of updating. And there's a public access point marked by number 1 on this that where you can access the bay trail from the sidewalk. And again, we're excited about being part of this, the rapid kind of change in this area. I think it can be for the better. And we put together this diagram to just show that we've considered the context of development and existing recreational assets within the area. So there's Bayside Park, Murray Field, the Anza Fisherman's Park, Robert Wooley State Park. There's lots of public places, public parks and recreational opportunities already, as well as all of the development that you've seen come before you that are adding new ways to access shorelines, new public access areas. And there's our site at 620 Airport. Within the context of all these developments, we want to make sure we're doing a project that fits, that adds amenities that are needed, does not try to do things that we don't need to do in terms of recreation and other amenities. So I think it's an exciting time. Ultimately, all of these projects we hope will come together and make the Anza Peninsula a better place to be for the public. And here is an overview of our project site. As Jeremy mentioned, we have a 5-acre site, 40% of which will be dedicated to public access. And the siting of the 2 building volumes with below-grade parking allows us to have this central open corridor through the site, allowing both physical and visual access through the site. And I'll just take you on a brief walk through this overall plan, and then I'll go through some enlargement plans after. From Airport Boulevard, if we start at the bottom of this plan, we do have a public stair and accessible sloped walk up from the airport side, which is down at around 11 feet currently, up to the building elevation, currently at 17 feet per the guidelines that were laid out by Tony in terms of the one shoreline guidance on the required building elevations. As you move through the site, you pass the building lobbies, and then as you further north, we have a stroll garden with native gardens, public seating nooks, and then moving north you're able to transition off of from the building plaza down to the Bay Trail through a series of paths, steps, and a terrace seating area that takes you to the Bay Trail. Along the Bay shore, we'll be widening the Bay Trail to the current standards of 18 feet and adding public amenities such as picnic areas, seating areas, and the outdoor fitness zones. And there's some more details on the site that I'll get into as I go through the enlargement plans. In terms of circulation, we really wanted to create as porous a site as we could. So we have public pathways throughout the site, not only from the roadside, but coming up from the bay side through the site. So all the orange solid lines you see are publicly accessible paths, ADA accessible paths. We've tried to maintain gently sloping walks as much as possible without ramps. It's important to note that we do have public parking. On the left side of this plan, you'll see the blue arrow and the 5 public parking spots there around in the blue dashed line. A key point close to the existing public access node on the left. And then we have a direct path to the Bay Trail from there that's currently designed at roughly 3.5% or so a gentle walk that switches back down to the Bay Trail. In terms of amenities we're adding to the public parcel, a whole set of amenities that I think will transform this place from a place that you pass through currently, that's it's really a pass-through kind of space, to a place that's a little more of a attraction, a destination with outdoor fitness and the picnic areas, seating areas, and the much improved seating, as well as native planting. In addition, if you look at the lower left of this plan, we've located a site that we think is promising for an interpretive art feature, perhaps something that is an interpretation of sea level rise using earthwork and interpretive sculptural features. So now I'll go through a few of the enlargement plans. This one from the plaza between the buildings and the garden through down to the terraced feature. Oh, let me go back. So the idea here is really to create an environment that is seamlessly connected between the shoreline, sort of native planting, up onto the plaza. So we're moving from the on-grade system onto the structure, but the goal is to have a seamless design of pathways and landscape that brings you up onto that plaza and allows the public to enjoy the stroll garden. Again, we're up at around 17 feet, and then we step down. Gently sloping paths and steps take you down to the Bay Trail. It's at roughly 13.3 in the proposed day one scenario. Here's the long section going from Airport Boulevard on the right out to Anza Lagoon. Airport Boulevard's at around 11 and a half. We get up to 17 for the drop-off and emergency vehicle turnaround, and then move across that plaza. And this section cuts through that terrace seating feature, which helps negotiate the grade change that you'll see a little bit closer up in this section. What you don't see, but that you do see in the plan, is that there are gently sloping paths on either side that come down to the grade that allow people in wheelchairs and to get down to the Bay Trail. Moving over to the west of the terrace seating, we have a picnic area, gentle slopes up to the building elevation, and a couple seating areas on the water side of the bay, of the trail, I'm sorry. And again, just a section through the picnic area, showing the picnic area at Bay Trail grade, with the paths showing the beginnings of their slope up to the plaza level through, dense planting, and as many trees as we can get in there. I think for full disclosure, I thought we should show you the pinch point that we've got. We have notched the northwest corner of that parking lot, which generally has a wider planting zone in there, but this is the kind of the tightest condition that we have, where we still have around 8 feet of planting there. So I think this is just full disclosure, sort of a tight spot, but everywhere else is more generous. and then moving back over to the east side where we've had the secondary path that loops off of the Bay Trail, circulates past several outdoor fitness stations, and then back to the Bay Trail. Again, just a site section through that showing the fitness zone down at the Bay Trail level and this gentle sloping up towards the building. And finally, down to this corner of the site, the existing public access, the public parking there, closest public parking spots to Airport Boulevard. Worth noting that there will be clear signage indicating public parking at this location, and I think you'll be able to see the actual public parking from the roadside. And then there's a clear path, sloped accessible walkway directly down to the Bay Trail. I think this is a great spot for the public parking here. And then the zone on the lower left, looks like a big planting area with those U shapes. That's the site that we've identified as a good site for public art. And, preliminary concepts could be earthwork combined with, sculptural elements that give you an interpretation of sea level rise. So we are, the proposed project, day one project, protects shoreline protection that exceeds the mid-century OPC projection for high emissions, medium high risk aversion model. As Tony mentioned, that's 1.9 feet. We're raising the site beyond that to 13.3 feet. In addition, we've verified that the site can accommodate adaptation for future sea level rise to a 17 minimum elevation through a combination of realigning the Bay Trail a bit, pushing it towards the land side and raising the grade up, a combination of that, and where you see the darker lines there, some seawalls that help us get up where we don't have as much space to completely realign the Bay Trail. And then everything you see highlighted in this slide, all of the amenities and planting would have to be renovated at that point in time. The following sections are just updates of the previous sections that show in orange the adaptation measure, where in many cases we can use grade and push the Bay Trail towards the landward side, add a little bit of additional shoreline protection, and then raise up those amenities. And then in some cases where we have less space, we will have to propose a seawall for an adaptation measure and raise the top of the wall to 17 feet. Our approach to materials and site elements is a fairly simple one, but with art and care, using natural materials and durable materials that are appropriate for the shoreline conditions. So concrete and wood, the Bay Trail materials that are standard, some additional crushed stone pathways, and the typical kind of public bike racks. Planting palette has a focus on native California plants and Mediterranean climate adapted plants. So, plants that are, we would choose plants again that are durable, appropriate to the shoreline condition. It's worth noting that we would want to plant the shoreline as far as possible towards the mean high water line. I think there's less wave action along the lagoon, so I think the riprap protection does not have to go as high as you would if you were out on the bay side. So we hope to have robust planting throughout the site with a focus on dependable natives that are appropriate for the site. Same with trees, not exclusively native trees, but trees that would be appropriate for the shoreline conditions and also provide some flowering and seasonal interest. In terms of bird-safe design, the project is committed to having a building that is not dangerous to birds, and we've begun that process of studying how to make that a reality. And as we move forward, I know the architects are committed to researching whatever the best technology is for making these buildings bird safe. In terms of signage and wayfinding, we know it's important to make sure that it's clear where the public is allowed, where the public is welcomed, and that, in this case, is at almost every entry into this site. So in orange, the reddish orange, we anticipate clear wayfinding signage into the site for public parking, for the public access point on the left, for the access points from the Bay Trail up to the plaza, as well as sort of mid-site signage that lets people know that there are ways down to the Bay Shore. The blue dots on this indicate some potential areas for interpretive signage, and we think there are some opportunities for historical and ecological site interpretation on the site. Preliminary thoughts on this. And finally, we've got some renderings to finish off with here. This is a view looking back towards that terrace feature into the plaza, looking kind of east. And I think that, again, that generous kind of gesture of a public seat looking over the bay, looking over the lagoon, will be quite nice and a really special moment in this site. Another view, just looking up from the plaza back into the site towards the turnaround, the sort of outdoor gathering spaces, and the east building, all nestled in what we imagine to be pretty rich native planting. And finally, an overview, bird's eye view of the site, of the project that we really think is going to be a great improvement to public access in this part of Burlingame, and a piece, a good piece in that puzzle that's happening right now of putting together better public access and really a great experience with the shoreline around here. So I appreciate your time and looking forward to your comments. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That was very clear. Let's go to clarifying questions from the presentation. Next step. Bob?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Can you clarify the relationship with the public parcel that entails a state lands lease that is, I guess, managed by somebody else, a different property owner? Is that what I heard? Could you clarify how? I mean, it sounds like it's not clear whether that's part of the project or not, or if it is part of it.
Sure. If I'm, is now the time for me to respond? Okay, sure. If you don't mind going to page 2, so we can take a look at it. It is certainly a part of the project. It is, I would say, a very meaningful part of the project. As I mentioned, the entire site is 5 acres. The private parcel is 3.7, so the balance of that, about 1.3 acres, is a part of state land. So there's quite a bit of history here that I think actually is probably best explained at perhaps another time. But there's a hotel operator across the lagoon that has the leasehold rights. They don't own the land, but they own the rights to operate a hotel. And part of that lease also includes the maintenance of a wide band of land that wraps around the lagoon. Actually, it goes beyond this page and it wraps around to the north side of it. They currently hold the rights to that, and we have been in conversations with them to present our project and take on the responsibility for maintenance over time. And so we are in conversations with that party as well as state lands to draft a written agreement to do this project. So it is certainly a part of the project.
Well, so you expect to get that approval, but if you don't, then you will not be improving the public parcel, or is that just for the maintenance subsequent to the improvements?
We've had several conversations with them. At this time, there's no particular reason to believe that we can't get that done. It certainly will take a bit more work. If we don't, we would change the project.
Okay, thank you. That answers that question. I had one more, and thank you for that detailed answer. I know it was in the write-up, but for some reason I needed that clarification. Thank you. My second question was, it seemed that from the section views that there's parking underground. Is that correct? And it just raises questions about where the groundwater is and where the groundwater will be with sea level rise to me. And I don't know if you want to answer all of that, but I just want to be clear that there's parking underground below tide levels. And I guess the specific question also is, does your sea level rise adaptation actions or plan include some action to maintain or to reduce that parking, you know, given that sea level may cause the groundwater to go up as well? And I don't know if you're confident that that parking will be secure from flooding, you know, through the groundwater,
Right.
not the surface.
I think for the initial, I think I'll have to defer to the architect, Karen, about the studies that have been done regarding the parking in the groundwater.
Sure. Thank you. We have been working with our structural engineer and geotech. Definitely the groundwater is influenced by the tides in this area. But, you know, we chose to not celebrate the parking, but to improve the experience here at some expense. And there will be a hefty waterproofing system for that garage. And in addition to that, the foundations will have to address both those tidal influences and that future potential sea level rise.
Okay.
It's a big investment, but I think it was done, I know it was done to have this seamless experience instead of passing by a garage, to pass through a beautiful park type experience in Plaza.
Yeah, thank you for that clarification. I wasn't being critical. I just wanted to kind of understand from my perspective as an engineer. Thank you.
May I add a response to that as well? We very much appreciate that question. We went out there and tested the groundwater to understand where it is, and it's no secret, it shouldn't be a surprise that water generally follows the tides, and we've measured it as low as -5 and then as high as 2 feet based on the elevation of the existing parking lot. And as Karen mentioned, one of the reasons why we decided to go with this parking arrangement is really to hide that as much as possible. It is more complex, it is also more expensive. But from the public's view, you kind of don't see it. You don't see it. And we certainly understand the challenges of it. In fact, if one walks around to some of the buildings around this area that have been built more recently, you can see some of the challenges. So we're very aware of that, and we'll be spending a lot of time thinking about how to design something that can last the course of time.
Thank you.
Andrew?
Thank you, Chair McCann. I had 2 questions. One, maybe if you go to slide page 7 of the presentation, would help. There, I'm wondering what is the program that is in, this is a 2-part question. What's the program that's in the ground, within the shoreline band? There's a little, looks like a little corner on the building on the left, and then a big chunk in the building on the right. And the second part of that question is that just the 1-story piece? It looked like from the renderings there was kind of a 1-story piece that protruded, or is that program going through all the stories?
That program is on the ground floor, and what we have shown in blue here, labeled as flexible space, is meant to be transparent, active program, a mix between amenities for the tenants and publicly accessible amenities, potentially a cafe space. I think that the owner and the architect have been discussing where that could go. So it's 1 floor, and the idea is for it to be transparent and active space, some of which will be accessible to the public. Do you want to add anything to that, Karen?
Andrew, did you have a second question?
Yeah, I did. The second question was just in trying to understand the parking that's beyond the public parking in that parking lot. Can you just describe what's the difference between that parking and the parking that is in the garage? Or maybe describe the necessity of the surface parking that's in the shoreline band. Thank you.
Do you want to take that one, Karen?
Sure. That parking, that is fire department access, trash access, and the top of the garage, helping us to achieve the parking requirements that are required by the city for this site, the parking ratio.
Thank you. That's those are my only questions.
Can I just, I want to check a clarification and follow-up question. So a number of those spaces are for public parking, but are the balance to accomplish parking that doesn't fit in the garage? Is that basically to make up the total number of spaces?
Some of that, and also for, service vehicles that might be associated with the project. The potential tenant could be R&D, and so there could be some cars there that are there for, servicing a building like this. But they are parking spaces associated with our parking count.
I see. Thank you. Gary.
Okay, so those are not dedicated for the public? Some of those are? Is that?
We have 5 spaces in the lower left corner dedicated to the public for BCDC.
Got it. Thank you.
And then the remainder are parking spaces for the building. They could be visitors, they could be service, they could be employees.
Great, thank you. Okay, follow-up question. How many parking spaces are there total, and is that determined by code or city planning, or is it by making the building marketable and desirable?
It's determined by the occupancy type projected for the building, and there are 838 spaces. Kind of relying on my memory there, but I'm pretty sure it's 838.
Kind of whatever.
Yeah.
And can you point out what is the extent of the below-grade parking garage?
Justin, if you go to one of the plans, you can kind of see the outline of the, yeah, it's just shy of the property line. I believe it's 10.
So the full extent of the dotted black line? So that would include the access lane on the east, and where it says property line, including the guest parking that we were just talking about, the surface parking. So the parking garage goes underneath that parking.
So the access lane on the east is actually on grade. You go up a little bit, you can go into some parking in the building, and then it goes down, and there's service, access, and entry into the garage at a lower point. That's actually coincident with the adjacent parcel in terms of elevation. The center drive is for drop-off and fire access. And then on the west side, you actually go up on top of the podium. So the garage on the east side, sorry, it's kind of a long way to tell you this, but the east side is the edge of the building of the garage. On the west side, it's the property line that you see there.
Yeah, if you go to page 15, I think it kind of shows in section. I keep going. There, right? That's the garage underneath the. Am I understanding that correctly?
That's correct.
The garage
yes.
underneath the parking area.
That's correct.
sorry, at the northwest corner of that area. So that larger plant area with the trees in it is actually a location that's where the parking garage has actually got a notch in it.
Is the center landscaped area, is that all on parking garage
That's all on
as
Sturgeon
well?
Street.
Okay.
And
Anyway, I think it'd be helpful to have a plan showing that, you know, when and if you come back.
Okay. Gary, anything else?
No, that's it. Thank
Okay.
you.
I just have two clarifying questions. There's, the documents mention 2 bus services or shuttle services that have stops nearby. Can you point them out on the plan?
this location here, there's a shuttle that's run by, what's the name of the, commute.org?
Yeah,
It's a ccagcommute.org shuttle.
Where are you pointing to? The orange?
The orange dots.
The orange
here.
dots,
These
yeah,
are shuttle,
okay.
shuttle stops.
Yeah.
Right. Is that the question?
So, yes, so there are 3 stops that I can see that you've mapped, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Well, 4, there's one in the
As
middle
well,
of
yeah,
the,
but 2,
there's
yeah,
one over here, 2,
3,
3, 4,
okay.
and then,
Okay, and then the second clarification, if you could just go to the final rendering, the aerial view of the development. I just want to make sure that I understand the relationship between, with grade, between the buildings and the public space. So the building that's on the north side, it looks like it's got something that's sort of open air. You've got a podium level, and then it seems to step down to an open air level below it, which doesn't seem to match what's on the plan. See on the southern corner of the northern building. What's going on there? So keep coming along. It looks, yes, so go to the corner, the other corner.
here,
Yeah, what's in that zone?
sorry.
So is that the flexible space?
Yes,
Yes, okay. And so that's at 17.
correct.
Got it. Okay, and then you come up one level, then you step back to the right. Okay. Good. Thank you.
Well, actually, I'm a little confused. So the finished floor before adaptation is 17, not 13?
That's right. The proposed
Yeah, well,
finished
that
floor
makes
on day 1 is 17.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
For the building.
Makes sense.
Yep.
Right, and so you'll see that terrace seating feature is roughly 3 feet, getting you down to 14. And then those paths that come off of the podium are gently sloped paths at, between 3% and 4% or less coming down to the Bay Trail.
Good. Okay.
I have another question, Wen. Go ahead.
No,
After you're
that's,
done.
I was going to say,
Yeah, I'm just curious about the
You're
big cantilevered slabs. So that's outdoor space that's part of the project that's up off grade on the second level. So you're saying the flexible zone is down below?
That
and then
ground level.
On
Yeah,
top
and then
of that is another kind of, for the use of the occupants, I presume?
Right, is that space, Karen, is that space programmed as office R&D space?
The actual occupied space is smaller. Otherwise, we would have exiting issues off of those roofs. So they're meant to be, have some planted, pots on that roof.
I'm referring to the second level space, the big,
Yeah.
huge cantilevered area that's planted?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Because I think the building on the left, it shows a small ground level or one-story protrusion, but I didn't get from the plans that there was this massive cantilever, so that's actually shown as open space, but it's actually covered. Is that right?
No, the footprints I show on the plans are the
Okay.
is how the, do you see the section, well, is that correct? Let's see. Let me go back here. You can see here that the buildings step back. So everything I'm showing in the plans is that edge of the lower floor. So I was not showing the upper floors as the footprint of the building on the plans, if that's the question.
Yeah.
So here's the thing that you see.
Yeah,
So it's not
there's
a cantilever.
I got it, yeah. I think it's the way it's drawn. It's
The way it's
very
drawn.
appealing. It's glassy floor, glassy wall, so that the floor looks like a cantilever. But I guess my question is in the key plan in the upper left, the building on the right has a this one-story protrusion, which seems smaller than the roof that's shown in the perspective rendering. I think if we look at a plan, I think the one that Andrew is pointing to in the first question, yeah.
This
Yeah.
thing here?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
that's a ground level, that's a ground level paved space.
Okay.
So that is not part of the building. So
I see.
that, you know, it's a little bit undefined right now, but associated with this flexible space, place that people can occupy at the ground
Okay,
floor.
so there's a setback from where the hand is there, like another, I don't know, 30, 40, 50 feet back before the building goes to full height. Is that right? So,
Right.
yeah. Okay, okay, I think I'm starting to get it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I think that concludes the clarifying questions. Thanks very much. We'll go to public comment now. So now that the presentations and board questions are complete, we'll open the meeting to public comment. Any member of the public attending the meeting in person, please notify the board secretary if you would like to make a comment. If you're attending online and would like to make a public comment, please raise your virtual hand to speak. Remember, if you are joining our meeting via phone, you must press *9 on your keypad to raise your hand to make a comment. To unmute or mute, press *6. You'll be called in the order that your hand was raised, and you'll have 3 minutes to speak. Ashley will note when you have 1 minute remaining. Please state your name and affiliation for the record at the beginning of your comment. And as mentioned at the beginning of the meeting, if you'd like to add your contact information to the interested parties list to be notified of future meetings concerning this project, please call or email Andrea Gaffney. So, Ashley, will you, I'll hand to you if anyone has any questions hand raised.
We have no public comment.
Okay. Oh, but we do have one submission. So, Andrea, could I hand to you for that, please?
Yeah, we actually received an email. It came in after the deadline, which was, I think, 10 a.m. this morning, but I will include it because I received it. So I have 2 public comments for you. So the first one is from Sequoia Audubon Society, and I emailed you this one. So I will not read the entire thing, but I will summarize. They have 3 key points. They said that they request that the board consider access to the features of the natural and built environment, and we hope the panel will agree with these principles. For all people, the experience of being near nature has mental health benefits. For many people who use the Bay Trail, there is deep appreciation for the diversity of wildlife and knowing that every effort is being made to protect those resources. And for all of us, natural systems provide ecosystem services whether we observe them or not. So they are asking that as the project goes forward, that consider that maximum may not mean maximum human footprint, energy, and alteration. It can mean maximum natural experience. And environmental protection should be part of DRB's mission to achieve a high level of design quality in waterfront development. There are specific comments that they made that are outlined. The comments have been shared with the board as well as with the project proponents. So I'm not going to repeat them here, but if you need me to elaborate on anything, I can.
Andrew, the letter is excellent, detailed, very thoughtful, and I think the board needs to take into account this submission, and we will do that. Appreciate it.
Do any of the board members need me to remind them of the comments? Do you recall them?
I have a question. I mean, I read it. This kind of relates to something that will come up in our discussion, but do they have any recommendation on access to the water? Or is it more of a passive observation of an interaction with the natural ecology? That's kind of I should have sorted that out myself earlier, but.
They don't mention it.
Okay,
Yep.
thank you.
Okay.
Okay, and then the one that I received this afternoon, this is acting strange. It is from Anthony Montez from the Silicon Valley Bike Coalition. He's a community organizer from North San Mateo County. Says the proposed development would provide a positive impact on the current condition of the Bay Trail and would welcome the proposed improvements the plans outlined to the trail. The Bay Trail is one of the most popular Class 1 shared use trails in the area, and our members and their communities would greatly benefit from its improvement. Our only concern is with the development is the estimated 860 vehicle parking spots in the parking garage that's slated to have. We hope all interested stakeholders find ways to reduce traffic in the area, including working with the city to lower its parking minimum requirement or establishing a shuttle service to and from nearest transportation hub to encourage employees to use active transportation and public transportation methods. Thank you for your time and consideration. And we will include both of these comments in the meeting minutes and then forward them to the project proponents.
Great. Thank you, Andrea. Well, with that, we conclude the public comment period. And we'll go to our next part of the meeting, which is board discussion and advice. So this will be between the board, and this is an opportunity for us to consider what we've heard, both from the proponents and also public comment. And within the context of the specific questions that the staff have asked us to consider, as well as the 7 objectives that we always consider. Quick run through those 7 objectives: making public access as public as possible, making it usable, providing, maintaining and enhancing visual access to the bay, the shoreline, maintaining and enhancing the visual quality of the bay, providing connections and continuity along the shoreline, taking advantage of the bay setting, and ensuring that public access is compatible with wildlife through siting, design, and management strategies. And then we have 3 questions. The first question that staff has asked us to consider is, does this proposal result in public spaces that really feel public, and does the project proposal allow for the shoreline to be enjoyed by the greatest number of people? Second question, what additional improvements would improve the public access experience to and along the shoreline? And the third question, what advice or criteria does the board recommend for the interpretive art feature? And there is a fourth question too. Are the public access areas appropriately designed to be resilient and adaptive to sea level rise in balance with the ensuring high quality public access opportunities? So we have those 4 questions and the bigger context of our overall objectives. And so let's frame our dialogue perhaps around these 4 questions. I do want to lead in just by saying how I really feel this is a very critical project. I know we've reviewed a lot of projects in this area recently, but every time I go down there and walk around the trail, it's apparent how many people use it from the community, as well as people who work in that area. But you see families, you see parents with babies. It's a very important resource for the community. So I think I'm very impressed that you're taking the enhancement of the existing trail and the environment around it so seriously, and taking measures like concealing the parking garage. With that, there's always opportunities to enhance the design, and that's what our job tonight is, to consider the proposal and come up with other recommendations. So if I could just ask you each to maybe make some comments in relation to the first question about the public spaces, how public they feel, and could there be ways to enhance that? We'll just go around the table here. Andrew, I'm going to ask you to lead off on this.
Sure. So first of all, I think the comment you just made, Chair McCann, about the parking being underground is a really important one, because we've seen a lot of projects in this area that have those gigantic garages. So it's nice to see one in which the parking is not such a prominent feature of the site. So I think that's a great advantage to this project. I think it's a really thoughtful that they've done that. I would say the comments I have about the sort of making it feel public is that generally the shoreline band component does feel public, but I guess I'm wondering why couldn't we just chop off those little parts of the building that come into the shoreline band? It seems like having the continuous shoreline band would be advantageous, and then the buildings actually would be responsive in a way to the shore's edge by not just being big boxes imposed on the site, but would have actually a relationship to the shoreline. If the footprint at that lower level actually followed the shoreline, I think that would be kind of nice. And I think it would be you'd have a more continuous sense of that kind of public space of the shoreline, as opposed to the building on the right, I feel like is really kind of pushing in to the shoreline edge. I do have some concerns about that parking on the north side of the left building and the big grade change that's happening there. It feels like we were getting, as you're going along the Bay Trail, as I recall, that was quite a bit higher. And so you'll be seeing you might be seeing, I guess, those cars at that edge there. That felt like that parking was kind of pushing very much in to that experience as well. But I think overall, to me, the shoreline band component for the most part does feel very public, and it feels like a continuation. And the part between the buildings does feel more private, but that makes sense in terms of their uses. But I like the way that there's a sort of infiltration of the landscape into that central podium.
Yeah. Well, thanks, Andrew. Gary, do you want to build off that?
Sure. Yeah, I concur with all that. I mean, I think also on the west edge where there's the surface parking lot, which is also encroaching into the shoreline band, and the underground parking garage is in the shoreline band. I don't know, when I started on the board a long time ago, the shoreline band was always reserved for special uses which had some kind of semi-public function, which I guess you could argue that parking is one of those, or some kind of shared amenity that would enhance the waterfront experience. And I just wonder, about that. I mean, it's really a question, I think, for everyone, whether that seems appropriate. But it's follow on to what Andrew was saying. So we're poking in a number of places.
Yeah, I'd just like to build off that. I think the surface parking area, we've heard from the proponent that there's a reason why those spaces are there, but it looks to me like there could be first of all, it's consuming a large part of the shoreline band, and the proponent mentioned and showed a cross-section at the tightest point. But it does look to me like it could be reviewed a little further. It just seems to be too tight to me. Even the turning, the turning, clearly that's truck turning, I guess, to get into the loading dock, but it is a significant encroachment, and it just looks like it could be reduced with some thoughtful planning. Bob, what do you think?
Well, just on that point, it wasn't clear to me why that service access wasn't on the other side of the other building, where there's this kind of more of an alleyway kind of thing, rather than in the shoreline band that's for public. I mean, I can understand the parking, but the delivery vehicles or whatever is going over there I don't know. I just wasn't clear as to the programming.
I think there might be service access on both sides.
Oh, there are? Okay.
I think so.
I see. Okay.
Yeah. But it's a good point. I mean, can you depend a little more on one side, a little more on the south side?
Yeah, my feeling overall is I had kind of a negative reaction with the encroachment into the shoreline band. I don't know if that's a theme in the Burlingame projects we're reviewing, but it's not the first one that's had that. So I have a concern about that kind of encroachment. I've only been on the board since 2019, but I also thought that the shoreline ban was for more public use, not for development. And also with sea level rise, of course, the shoreline's going to move, even though this plan seems to limit that in places with walls, so it's more of a vertical change. But if anything, I would think that, we might anticipate that the shoreline band would move landward, as like buffer space was the term that One Shoreline brought up to us with the city of Burlingame when we had the meeting before last. And I don't see any buffer space really here. And then, so that was a concern. So I think we all seem to have that concern. I was wondering if there was any interest in for stakeholders or in the designers to have access to the water for any kind of like water related, or if it, and I guess this is an existing situation where that doesn't exist, I guess. I'm not familiar with the site, but, some people like to be able to fish or to get down and touch the water or, and the like. And I didn't see any cross-shore access at all on this. And so that was like just a question as to why that wasn't included or whether there might be opportunities or interest for that. Also, I really just don't like the rock slope protection all along the shore. I know that was something that everybody did years ago, and it probably helped them fill the site and all that, but it really has no ecology. It actually has, I don't know if it's at this site, but usually you see ground squirrels and stuff, which are kind of cute, but they're not, I don't know, really beneficial to the habitat, I don't think. I'm not sure about that. But it's really unnatural in this setting. And it seems like a little bit of a lost opportunity where you have very little wave action. And so the rock may not even be needed for any kind of erosion control. And so, I'm just was wondering if anybody thought about softening that edge, providing some terraces, and also envisioning that as sea level rises, and you're talking about 6 feet or so, it's really going to be like being on the edge of a swimming pool or something, and I don't know. It's just, for me, enjoying the environment, there's a certain aesthetic that you can get from that, but it's not really an ecological one.
Yeah, look, let me just jump in on that too, because, just on the point of access to the water,
yeah.
It could be possible to do something here, but, it is tidal, and, there is an outlet from the lagoon, which is a pedestrian bridge that crosses, and it's got, large pieces of concrete to reduce the force of, the force of the water as it goes through. There, you could see in the pictures that there's wave action, and, the wave, where it says mean high water line there, that's sort of where the water comes through and sort of hits that spot there. I'd say probably with more, intensity just from observation.
So there might be some wave exposure in that particular location?
I think so, more so,
okay.
than further around on the, the further north. But certainly worth investigating. There were plenty of people fishing on the edge of the bay, just over on the other side of the lagoon, where the other segment of the Bay Trail is. And so I think there's a lot of interaction with the water on the bay edge itself. But there was certainly wildlife here, and when you look at it would be an interesting speculation if you look at the northern edge of the where the Bay Trail comes around to to Airport Drive, and sort of that makes a U-turn there. But if that parking lot wasn't there, you could actually move the Bay Trail inland a bit, and you could have a soft edge all the way down there, because that's a very, enclosed area there. So it's, it's not subject to a lot of wave action. So, you know, this is just an example because we see development projecting into the 100-foot shoreline band, an example where we end up not being able to see something that would be ecologically beneficial.
Right, and then also with sea level rise, if anything, the shoreline band is getting squeezed on the other side. So you have this coastal squeeze situation, which I recognize with the steep existing slope. It doesn't move laterally that much with sea level rise. I mean, theoretically, depending on what happens over time. But one of the pictures that the staff member showed, the bank looked pretty steep. I know it was a low tide picture, but it looked pretty, just didn't look all that nice to me. It looked like a drop off.
Yeah, and I think.
Yeah, and I'm just wondering if that's really, why are we locking that in when we're doing all this work and there's this large development proposed? Why is this over steepened, abnormal landform just being locked in and then adjusted with you know, buildings squeezing on one side and then maybe seawalls or retaining walls in certain places where you don't have space, which you might have had if the building was set back a little bit. So it just seems a little, it seems like the development's kind of maximized, even though you do have this nice space in the middle. It's just just feels a little uncomfortable to me as a coastal person.
Right.
That's just my initial reaction. I'm not a designer, but as an engineer, I think that typically what we've been trying to do is step back and provide a little buffer space, especially if we have natural areas, because the natural areas need space to transgress and move in and up with sea level rise. Here you have something that's already kind of hardscaped, and so maybe that's all you can do. It was a question as to whether or not there was any consideration of crossing that shore and or improving the ecology, which I don't, you know, I'm not sure I see that. And the images, the renderings are very nice, but I'm just skeptical of what kind of, if the planting's really going to look that nice on that edge over time. I mean, with active management, I guess it could, but I'm just not sure. You know, I'm not sure we're seeing it.
Yeah, I think these are great comments. You know, we have talked many times about the riprap edge and how the board is open to best practices for softening and terracing. And I want to also, I think, couch this comment in the criteria about is it beneficial to wildlife and following the ecological comments that you're making, which I think are really good. The reason I was interested in looking at the extent of the underground parking garage is because I was trying to figure out how much of the landscape is on structure and how much of it is on grade. I think that the, you know, landscape on grade is kind of a higher value ecologically than landscape on structure. I mean, I could be proven wrong on that. If the parking garage was 4 feet down and there was permeable paving and, you know, that entire middle area, which is really the big amenity here, you know, if that was all soil and there was sizable trees and really substantial vegetation shown in there. But if those are raised planters on structure, I think that the amount of water and energy that it takes to maintain them satisfactorily is much greater than when it's on grade. And so I just kind of want to raise that. And I think one simple practical thing that could be done maybe is just not to have quite so many small planters, little islands, you know, which are really kind of raised planter boxes, but maybe try to aggregate more of them, because I think that the more large reservoirs of soil you have, the more effective it is ecologically, and more, you know, it'd be more effective in bringing the shoreline habitat into that middle space.
Yeah, and would it make sense to, we've got comments from the Audubon Society, I think, is the Sequoia, that's like San Mateo County, I guess. Do they have any ideas on how the ecology could be improved or maintained, or how their experience could be, and can that be factored into this existing park. I don't know if anyway, it's just an idea.
Well, and their proposal does emphasize, the environmental commitments that, we should be considering, so, which is good. Look, I just want to speak
You're saying
to,
the development does.
well, their submission does elaborate on some of those points, so, which is good.
The Sequoia.
Yes.
Okay, yes,
Yes.
Thank you, because
Yes.
it wasn't clear to me looking at the development's presentation exactly what the ecological programming element was. I didn't quite follow it.
And I just want to come back, because the first question was, do the public spaces feel public? I just want to mention a couple of positive things that I think are terrific. Signage is improved. The Bay Trail is widened, which is a very significant enhancement. One thing that and so I think that does make the trail feel more public, so that's a great job. I think it's impressive. But I have a question, because to me, I don't know what you guys think here, but weigh in, because there's the public access point at the northern end, which is very clear, and proposed sculpture there, interpretive sculpture, which is great. But then when you come along, the only other pathway through the site, which is a bicycle access as well, is the stair up from Airport Boulevard up onto the podium. So you see that, I think it's 5.5 feet of stair, or 5.5 feet of elevation change. And then you've got a ramp, number 10, which it goes up at a fairly gentle grade, like 4.5%. And it just seemed to me like that is the only other, if you like, pathway that somebody can come through on, because there aren't pathways adjacent to the central roadway, for example, or the other access drives. And I just feel like, I don't know whether it's the ramp that seems to be so long. It just, it has to be there for access, but it looks, again, a little cramped, and I just don't know why the grade's 4.5%.
Does it need to be there? I mean, the main entry drive is not steeper than 8%, so
Right.
Is there anything that would keep you from just going straight in?
Well, and
Because
That's not a pedestrian. That's not a pedestrian entrance, right? The middle one is a vehicular. Because it says.
yeah, that's right, Andrew.
It says
Yeah, that's
passenger
right.
drop off at number
Sure.
11.
But could you add a sidewalk to it?
Yeah, exactly.
And then
Shared.
just make it just seemed complicated, and if I was coming along, needing to use a ramp, I think I would probably go up the driveway, just because it's a straight shot.
It's a long way in a wheelchair,
Yeah.
that's for sure.
Yeah. So anyway, that just looked, because that is the only other access point. So in terms of making public access feel very public, that seems like it could be enhanced to me.
Can I have an add-on to that comment? One thought
Yeah.
also is related to the public parking, and there's no sidewalk from this Airport Boulevard to the public parking. So if you happen to if you park there, I mean, I don't think it's going to be that visible because it's raised up and it is set pretty far back. But if you went for a walk and then you ended up coming back, let's say on Airport Boulevard, you can't get to the public parking. You'd have to double back and go all the way around to the ramp. Like if you just were doing a little walk and you forgot that you had to go in this little funny way to get to that little side thing. It seems like there would be nice to have a sidewalk getting you to the public parking from Airport Boulevard. It would make it feel more like there was something public there.
Yeah, thank you, Andrew. I agree with that. So I think, we should make these recommendations. And that's really dealing with point A and point B, these two questions, because I think, as with all these projects, even though we might see a large, and it's very appealing to see a big green space, podium space, although sharing your concerns, Gary, it's not generally going to be the destination for the public. We've really got to make sure that the access to the foreshore band is very clear and easy to use. Okay, look, let's go to question C. What advice or criteria do we recommend for the interpretive art feature? Thoughts on that? Andrew, did you have any thoughts?
I thought that some of the examples that were in there, the landform examples, might be reasonable, but I don't have anything really specific about that piece.
Sea level rise was mentioned as some possible.
Yeah, I mean, maybe the public art could be an extension of, item number 3, the terrace seating area, there could be a piece of shoreline where you could actually break through the riprap and do a little demonstration project or kind of extend that language.
Mm-hmm.
If you're gonna spend the money, I think it would be great to make it an integral part of the landscape and, maybe, use it as an opportunity to do something special that you wouldn't normally get a chance to do, rather than say, a named artist piece or something that's mounted, somewhere along the way.
I mean, the reaction or the thought I had, which is probably not exactly where it's currently positioned at number 12, but, I think something that was family friendly and where children could clamber around on it could be pretty interesting because, there's no, and I don't think we need formalized play equipment or anything like that, but some sort of the ability for someone to stop and explore and interpret if it is sea level rise. Gary, I like that idea, to be able to find it appealing to children would be great. I mean, where number 12 is at the moment, I can visualize something there, landform or something interesting as well. It's great to mark an entry point that we have there. So, but it's hard to visualize sea level rise at that spot exactly. So,
It is, and the blue numbers indicate the existing elevation, and I guess that the roadway won't be raised, or somebody else would raise it. So it is a little hard to visualize exactly how this works with the site higher, which I understand, and the road down lower.
Well, it's also likely that middle section will be raised separately. The part where you get to the Bay Trail would have to be raised in order to defend the road. So.
Well, and look, just tying this back to our visual access priorities as well. That is a major vista point into the lagoon, and because the plaza, the central zone is basically a raised podium where if you're in a car or walking along, it's 5.5 feet higher than where you're standing. So the views through, it'll be a view to a combination of planting and plaza and so on. So it's not an unattractive view, but it is a different type of view which you will not see the current view that you have through to the lagoon in that central zone. So I would just say if the view corridor that's at the northern end there is a really critical corridor. So sort of building up big landform or putting something that might block that view to the water at that point would be, I would discourage that. I think it's really important to keep that view very open.
So I guess you could see it from 101. You would be looking over, so I guess there would be an open view. But yeah, from Airport Boulevard, I think you wouldn't see.
It's a very different view condition to the existing view condition.
And we didn't have any views from there post-development, did we? Did we have any renderings?
From that side, I don't think so. We didn't see any.
So it does seem like it's so no matter what with this, I guess my understanding is that there will still be this space, the existing public space will be integrated into the site plan and improved in the sense that the trail will be widened and there'll be new planting and some other things, but so that's nice. I mean, I'm sure that with bicyclists using this trail, it would be nice for the trail to be wider so that, you know, there's truly multiple uses, and maybe, I guess,
Well, it's widened to 18 feet.
in this plan,
proposal.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's a nice amenity.
Which is good, yeah.
And that's probably gonna, I guess, you said shoulders, so it'd be like a jogging trail or something like that, or, you know, people jog on this. I see that in other places, but, there can be conflicts with the bikes and the, other types of transit. Again, it does kind of lock in this, lagoon shore that already seems a little steep and unnatural to me, and that, there isn't a buffer really, and if anything, it's, whatever buffer there is reduced.
I mean, I think we
Everything's
should,
steepened,
you know, we really should be asking the proponents for as creative an approach to that shoreline buffer as possible. If it's possible to step it, I mean, they did mention they would try to plant, you know, into it, but, you know, the fact that there's going to be a lot of money spent on this edge, like, can't we, even if we need to hold that line mainly, is there a way that it can be, you know, that it can be you know, it can be built in a way that's a little softer than how it might look traditionally?
Yes, I agree.
Yeah. You know, there's another comment. I don't know what you guys think about this. I mean, I liked the approach to the planting and, you know, that all looked good. But I do think when you follow the Bay Trail, there are some trees, you know, particularly towards the sort of the southern end. But there's really, and I'm not sure, I might be misreading the plan, but there are a couple of existing trees next to where those two they're rebuilding these, but where those two little lay-bys are with the two benches on the eastern side of the Bay Trail, there are a couple of trees along there at the moment, and I know they all have to go, but I think a little more shade along that trail could be very beneficial. It's hot there in summer and strong winds coming through, I think we should have a better, just some better amount of shade there for people.
I completely agree with that, because the plantings on structure are not going to get that stature probably. I mean, maybe they will. It all depends on how much soil you give them, but I think the drawings that you've shown are realistic, that they're, you know, you can get some sizable vegetation there, but not like big canopy trees like you would find that you could really gather a group under or something like that.
Yeah, so I mean, I just want to make sure that we have sufficient trees you know, trees that are in natural ground to thrive there and to provide shade. And I don't think there's enough right now. Okay, the final question we were asked to consider are and we've touched on this, but, you know, I don't want to restate it if we've already commented on this, but, you know, are they appropriately designed to be resilient and adaptive to sea level rise in balance with ensuring the high quality public access opportunities? And I would add environmental opportunities to that, as Sequoia has asked us to do. Anything further we should say?
Yeah, I can jump in. I mean, I think the fact that they're raising it to 17, you know, indicates that they're planning for a high level of sea level rise, and so that's good. The parking underground is good in a lot of ways, but it's going to take some special attention probably to keep the water out, deal with that. And then but the shoreline band seems to be squeezed. As the land goes up, the water goes up, the land's going to get squeezed. So that was my only concern, really, the sea level rise.
Look, I just, in terms of, this applies to the earlier questions too, but, you know, ensuring high quality public access opportunities, it's great to see bicycle parking adjacent the buildings, and I may be missing spots that it's occurring along the Bay Trail, but I mean, I think there's maybe two things here. Just one, you know, if there could be some obvious bicycle parking, maybe close to where the entry to the trail is, just to encourage people to, you know, be able to place their bikes on a bike rack and then, you know, walk around or have a picnic or whatever would be great. And I also think just for your tenants, maybe having some indoor bicycle racks too. You may have those, but I think that would be an enhancement as well as the outdoor ones. People like to park their bicycles inside for security. Okay, so Andrew, anything else you want to mention? Feedback on question 4? Or any,
yeah, I guess
anything
the
else?
one thing about that is, I guess the riprap gets raised, and then we have, for quite a bit of it, we have this wall. I mean, I guess I'm kind of wondering, would another solution be where the wall actually moves out? You get rid of the riprap and the wall moves closer to the water's edge. It seems a little funny to now have this more steeper riprap, and then you have this low wall anyway. I'm wondering whether then you could just, if you're going to spend all the money to do this, could you just get closer to the water's edge anyway and not have the riprap? Or I don't know if the riprap is providing something of benefit, but I'm curious, Bob, if you have any thoughts about that, or some areas
Yeah,
where
you know, that's interesting.
Maybe we could go to a cross section just to.
Yeah, I'd like to respond to that. I think that's an interesting idea. You know, one thing that could be done, which is different, would be to actually push the wall out and have some sort of extension of a walking space, like a little outrigger with railing.
Go to page 24, I think, shows there's the wall, right?
So it'd be a more urban, sure, but it might still be better than, or be more attractive and useful than having a wall and then straight down to rock, you know, riprap. But the alternative view that whenever I see these things, I think about setting the building back and flattening the slope a little bit, and so that it takes more space, but you know, accommodating the water a little bit that way. So over time, things kind of stay the same and you don't lose shoreline band. But and then this is a little different, but on the other side, you know, like the Embarcadero, you could have, you know, hardscape that goes out in places and provides some diversity. You know, that kind of crosses the shoreline a little bit, and it might be interesting to people. I don't know.
Well, and I think this cross section, just to underline a point that we've made quite clearly, but, you know, the 100-foot shoreline band is meant to be for public access and you know, appropriate environment for the public access. And I mean, this pinch point, which I thank you for illustrating that, being upfront about this, but, you know, it just does demonstrate that when you put driveways and parking into the shoreline band, you end up with this sort of restriction. So, you know, I just think that, and, you know, we say this, but, you know, we really mean it, that we should try and pull as much development, whether that's parking or buildings, out of the shoreline band as possible. And I know that's a challenge because you've got a lot of program to get in there, but these are the results of it that, you know, are not.
Yeah, it just kind of looks a little intimidating to me right now, although it could be exciting and invigorating to come around the corner. The other thing about this location is that there's a lot of wind, which is why there's windsurfers. There's probably going to be some eddies and stuff, and off the edges of these buildings, and it might be a little brisk at times. Might be a little, I don't know. It's hard for me to imagine exactly how it's going to feel, but it's going to be like, you know, being downtown almost with this big building right there on the end.
Yeah. I do wonder.
Go ahead, Andrew.
Well, just going on what Chair McCann just said, I do wonder, given this is a big adaptation, it's going to be very expensive. They have to redo the whole landscape. I mean, maybe at that point, the attitude, the parking and this loading thing could change. And maybe we could actually have more in the adaptation scenario. Maybe there's more room and you just don't have the parking along the edge and you give this more breathing room and do maybe, as Bob was saying, there can be more of a softer edge. You don't have to have this edge condition.
Great point. I mean, in 20 years' time, 25 years' time, I would have to hope that there aren't the same number of vehicles going to offices as are currently projected, which is a mystery to me why they're projected at this amount anyway. But
Yeah, it's a large amount of parking.
yeah,
I presume that the decision to put the parking garage below grade means that you have to spread it out over a much larger area. So if they were putting their parking above grade like everybody else, a couple levels or something like that, then you know, you could pull it back. So I do see that you're kind of between a rock and a hard
right.
place
And
on that one.
it's very impressive that the proponent is spending a lot of money to put the
Yeah.
parking underground.
We don't mean to criticize your,
Yeah.
your, favorable endeavors there, so,
Yeah.
but,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I think we've.
yeah.
I think you can get the, pretty clear communication from the board here on what our concerns are. So, look, I think with that, unless anyone's got anything else you want to say, I think we'll wrap up our response. I think we've captured everything that we wanted to say, and I think, Andrea, we could go to the project proponent response.
I'll just say, compared to the parking lot that's there today, seems like an improvement, vast
Yeah.
improvement. So, yeah, I think, you know, we kind of forget to say
Yes.
the obvious, but I think you guys have done a really great job getting to this point.
Okay.
Yeah,
Andrea,
well, I want to add a point of clarification, because this is something that's been coming up with all of the Burlingame projects. Staff generally does not look at the shoreline band as a setback. We say it's the shoreline band, it's our jurisdiction. You have the requirement to provide maximum feasible public access consistent with your project. If you're going to be putting buildings or structures in the shoreline band, we're going to look at that in consideration of the total project and how it is inviting to the public and, you know, how it basically fulfills the public access, public space guideline objectives. But we're generally not saying, no, you can't build in the shoreline band, and no, it's not a setback. However, the interesting twist on this is the Burlingame ordinance for their shoreline protection and adaptation, and the discussions that we've been having with the city of Burlingame and with One Shoreline, where they're more or less advocating for the shoreline band to be an adaptation space that is reserved for adaptation purposes. So putting permanent structures in that area is counter-indicative to the goals of their shoreline protection planning. So it's a little more nuanced of a discussion in this particular city at this particular time.
Right.
So I'm not disagreeing with anything you're saying or discounting it. I'm just framing it a little more from like staff perspective.
it's very helpful, Andrea. Yeah, because we can get, I think because our focus is so much on adaptation now, and trying to be, to make use of the tools we have to not go to traditional engineering solutions as our first, first response, that we can see how much benefit that 100-foot shoreline band can provide. So it's not a black and white setback, and we need to be mindful of that.
Yeah. But it's, I think thus far, the comments that we've seen where the shoreline band and attention to it and what goes into it in Burlingame have only resulted in better design projects. So I just wanted to sort of note the staff perspective, but also recognize that the board's comments have been productive and useful.
Well, thank you for that. That's very helpful. Okay, I think at this point we'll go to the project proponent response.
Sure.
Over to you. Yes.
I think we certainly appreciate the comments, very thoughtful comments. I don't think we can possibly respond to every single one, but I think between the needs of the public and perhaps the city of Burlingame, tenants, and some of the themes that we've talked about on sea level rise, this is certainly a very exciting but also challenging site to develop, and I think we'll take all of these comments to heart and see what we can do to address the issues that have been raised this evening. Otherwise, I don't have any other comments.
Thank you. Now, Andrea, this is our first review, and I would like to see this project again as it develops, but I'm happy to be guided by the board here. What do you all think?
I agree. I think we should see it again. I think there's so many different components to this, and also because there's so much shoreline and because there have been a lot of comments on that, and also I think the extent of the encroachments into the shoreline band and the type of encroachments that they are, I think we should just have another chance to see how it develops.
Yeah, it's also at a pretty
I agree. I'd like to.
schematic,
Okay.
conceptual level too, so I agree with that.
Yeah.
Right now,
Okay,
it's very
thanks, Andrew.
conceptual. Some of what we're seeing in terms of the drawings and the plans are pretty conceptual.
Thank you. And Bob, sorry.
Yes, I agree. It would be nice to see it again. Thank you.
Okay, so Andrea, that's our direction to you tonight. Okay. Okay, so Andrea, anything else before we adjourn the meeting?
I believe that's all we have for tonight.
Okay, well, again, thanks to the team, Andrea and team, for excellent work preparing for tonight and the materials you've shared. Okay, so with that, we'll adjourn our meeting. It concludes our review, and I would like to have a motion and a second to adjourn our meeting.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second?
I second that.
Andrew, second. And are there any objections? Hearing none,
No.
we're adjourned. Thank you and good night. Thank you to
Good
the
night.
proponents too for coming.